Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Inventing Construction. I'm Ross Griffin, and today we have a very special guest, Garry Connolly. But before Garry introduces himself, allow me to introduce the topic. We're going to talk about something controversial, I think, and in the media, within our industry, it's been talked about an awful lot, but I think it's still an important subject matter. Can the industry really deliver all of these data centers? So we're going to talk about data centers, of course. Is this a golden opportunity for data center developers and contractors? 40 to 80% of their revenue comes from outside Ireland. Looking at Ireland as a specific location, because Garry has a lot of experience. The Irish industry has the experience, but can it scale? Inefficiencies in our construction delivery. A lot of our Irish listeners will know about the planning challenges and the skill set challenges and supply challenges. Is the European energy grid ready? Again, we're hearing a lot about data centers being stopped, like in Ireland, like in Denmark, across the Nordics, other parts of Europe because of the energy supply. And then what I think is very important is the bad reputation that digital infrastructure has today. And then how can we change that and talk about the real facts? But before we get into it, Garry, perhaps you can introduce yourself. And thank you very much for joining us today.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much. Yes, you've covered a lot of stuff there, which I'm sure we'll get into. But so how do I arrive sitting here today? I'm actually a really bad data engineer.
All right.
The truth being that many of the older listeners might remember COBOL and BASIC and Fortran. So I came out of college a programmer, qualified, the worst programmer on the planet, because I find it very difficult to stick at anything for longer than sort of the words coming out of my mouth. But what it gave me, it gave me a great understanding, those 3 years of training in college, for the mindset of engineers, the mindset of programmers, so that when I came back out into the real world, I could empathize with them, the possibilities, the non-possibilities. I was no good at it myself. But then when I found myself in a sort of sales engineering role, one of the things that I hope we all agree is that there are different attributes of the brain. There are different types of people that are better at design, better at application, better. And I found myself in this middle space in the late 80s where computers were coming to people's desktops. And it amuses me often because, you know, I hear words like the gold rush, the AI wars, all these nonsense. And I feel like I've been here before when people were being introduced to a computer, which was a dual floppy. Microsoft Word was sort of, Excel was like a robot. And algorithms were going to replace my jobs. I've had more than one bang on the back of the head by bags or things, or you're not going to replace me with a robot. So I found myself in this position where the needs and the wants of the business couldn't communicate with a lot of the technology people because they were ready to get going. So I found myself in this position where I work in the why. And I think that was my favorite part of what I've done for the last 40 odd years. Interestingly, it's always been woven in foreign direct investment into Ireland. So I put it down to luck and good planning by predecessors in government and decisions that were made. That really what's dragged, and I'm a product of it, what dragged Ireland out of being the poor person of Europe to now being a challenged person of Europe, what we're going to talk about, was foreign direct investment. And that's why I haven't got one here. I wish I had brought it. But to me, when I started on this, a floppy disk was a data center. And it wasn't really the floppy disk hardware. That was the important bit. It was the Excel spreadsheet, the Microsoft Word that you saved onto it. Because in there was actually where people then didn't have to, in the case of a spreadsheet, work on a journal every day, make one mistake, guess what? Start again. And whether it was 1987 with spreadsheets or whether it's 2026, nobody wants to do the same job all day, every day. It's the reason why JCBs were invented. Because men don't like being in holes, digging holes. all day,
Yeah.
every day. They want to be driving the JCB.
Exactly.
So in long and the short, I use data as the catalyst to get myself into a position where I've seen floppy disks, which turned into hard disks, which turned into fobs, which turned into everything. And now it's just a server in somebody else's building, which is a data center.
Yeah.
And that's effectively how I end up here.
So so would you say then you're more of a people's person than what you'd consider a traditional coder working in, as what we think are traditional coders working in the basement in the dark?
I think
late at
so.
night?
But I think that we're so quick always, aren't we, to jump to a stereotype of anybody. In the 80s, we just wanted a bit of work.
It's true, yeah.
We just wanted a bit of work. And I dearly, having spent some of the early 80s in America on a soccer scholarship and failing, I didn't want to go away again.
Yeah.
I'd done that bit,
part.
and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
said,
yeah.
you know what I really want to do is get into something that I can actually possibly work at here in Ireland. And I actually ended up in Rathmines College of Commerce doing commercial computer programming. Did I know what it was? Absolutely not. Did I know there was a bit of work at the end of it?
Yeah.
And effectively, the people and we can all learn from this, the people I subsequently, 40 years later, go back and look at and we meet on occasion, I'd say only 35% of the people that actually did the course ended up now programming.
Yeah.
But I think it gave people like me discipline. I'm not very disciplined. I start a lot.
Yeah. But maybe that's what it is. Like, you are a starter, as opposed to finish a completer.
I think maybe, but also when you sit down, and many of your listeners would know this, you've got like a Gantt chart where you have to get to the end point before you start.
Yeah.
And you used to have
the journey.
You used to have to do these drawings and if, maybe, subpar and all this. And it actually helps you. And sometimes I go back to that as a discipline. So even somebody like me, you're learning, but it's a bit like music. I always think, when I loved music, but you weren't saying you like Barry Manilow in the 80s. But you didn't mind a bit of his few tunes,
Yeah.
But now when Spotify shows it up and says, because you listen to The Cure, you might like, you go, geez, it wasn't actually too bad.
Yeah.
So we're all formed by these, we spoke about it earlier, external influences and stuff. I just wanted a bit of work. I wanted to stay here. And I saw that data, or at the time it was COBOL programming or BASIC or computers or Pfizer were coming in and all these people. I said, I'll do that. And then I just, wherever it led me.
Whatever it led you, yeah.
But definitely I wasn't going to be behind a screen.
Yeah.
And also to the point, if I might add, is that I also noticed that we were so early pigeonholed. Programmers there, engineers, business problem over here, and then somewhere in the middle, most stuff gets lost.
The communication piece between both, yeah.
If I whispered something in your ear here,
you're Chinese
and you
whispers.
told the sound guy, and you told him, by the time he hears it, guess what?
Yeah, it's something different.
It's something different. So I like that meat and the sandwich bit. And maybe it's not for this show, maybe, but is that a bit that we're losing too?
Yeah.
That we're all so polarised in our views? And I'll email you.
Why don't you pick up the phone? Yeah. And it's the way it's going, I guess, because again, how we're trained and educated and how we operate in society now has shifted, hasn't it? And we are losing that ability to, I suppose, connect with people and to communicate really what it is that we want to say.
Yeah.
As individuals, but also as organisations, as you say. And we're going to get into it a little bit. It's becoming even more important as organisations now, especially in this large digital infrastructure requirement that every single country has. It's not just Ireland we're talking about here, or Denmark for that matter. It's every country has these same requirements, these same challenges, these same problems.
Yeah, it's just happened faster.
Exactly.
It's just happened faster and more people know about it quicker.
Can I ask you a question in relation to then, from the 80s, foreign direct investment to the developments? When did you see the uptake then of data centres kind of entering Ireland? When was the first data centre built, if you know when it was, and then the evolution to where we are today sitting here?
I guess some of the newer people listening on the show probably only are introduced to data centres over the last 2 to 3 years due to if it bleeds, it leads, it hits the front of the newspapers. But the reality is that data centres have just been there since mainframes. They were just called something different. And what they've moved from is a comms room in a company's premises to a factory built or a custom building somewhere else that everybody shares. So to your point in asking the question, to me, I knew that there was something changing when in 2000, just before 2000, around 1998, Ireland was recognised as the largest exporter of software in the world. And people say, how could that possibly be 4.2 million? Because basically all of the foreign direct investment from companies that are now not around, Lotus
Dell,
123,
yeah, yeah.
Microsoft, who are still there, Informix, BAN, all these software companies, effectively they were taking the code, whether it was code from Israel, Germany, or America, and we were doing a thing called localization. And that's why you've got more Spanish, Italian, French, Hebrew speakers around Sandyford in the late 90s who were working for Microsoft. So basically what you saw there was 3.6 billion worth of software export for Ireland, bigger than America. And then we started to hear things like the time Bill Clinton, etc., talking about this superhighway. What's this superhighway going to happen? And then, of course, we had the acceleration of the dot-com bubble. And suddenly people went from fixed media, floppy disk, to, www. This is great. The companies who were doing the software. And I think this is important for listeners too. And that's why I joke about the floppy disk to the hard disk, etc. How Ireland ended up as a centre of software exports via file servers, which sit in data centres, was because we exported right the way back to floppy disks when we started. So the lads around 98, 99, 2000 in Microsoft, in Informix, in places that said, do you know what's coming down the pipe? We're going to be not using floppy disk or CD-ROMs, probably more. We're going to be using somebody else's server. So they went and said, okay, when it happens, we want to keep the business here. So then we started to hear about sort of the dot-com bubble, the dot-com and the capital. And once the capital, of course, came in, people were then doing advanced factories, but they were called data centers. So I would say in real terms, 2001, 2, 3, in and around the dot-com bubble, there was a huge amount of capital. And the difference between the capital that's flowing today and then was they had a solution, the center, but they didn't know what the problem was, the data. Because for listeners, you have to remember, we didn't have smartphones. So what was...
or even computers at home at mass.
If you were doing really well, you'd got a low capacity computer, 286, 386. So you had the solution, which was this center, which had capability to hold servers and stuff. But without data, it's like a reservoir without water. It's a great concept, and we've all the pipes, and we've all. But where's the water?
We're
fully ready when it happens. But where's and it wasn't. So it was a concept before the reality. But the why was there. The why you needed was because you had more computers at that time. We just thought everybody'd have laptops. We didn't know that 2007 was around the corner. Steve Jobs, Apple will come with the iPhone, and bang. So around that time, the dot-com bubble, you start to see it. But others would tell me, sure, we had disaster recovery in Ireland, and we had servers in Sandyford. Could you call that a data centre? Yeah, probably.
Micro, I guess,
Yeah, but I guess from a commercial custom building, the real for Ireland Inc. was in and around the 2004 when Microsoft decided to officially say, okay, 365 is going to be cloud-based, and that cloud-based initial, what they call a proximity zone or a reach-out zone, will be from Dublin. And that's sort of like everything sort of crystallized. So they've gone from floppy disks to CD-ROMs to the server. And it's interesting, you mentioned it earlier, and probably for listeners too who are in the more construction space, in and around that same time that you're talking about, there was a lot of discussion about what are we going to call this with the superhighway in the States. And there were two marketing groups, one from Oracle and one from IBM. And the more technical people were IBM. And they wanted to call all this grid computing. Because that grid computing sort of was apparent, and it will be in the future. It's very like the electrical grid structure. There's real shit that needs to be built. There's containment,
exactly.
there's physical
Physical,
stuff, there's
yeah,
containment, there's
yeah.
protect the fibre cables coming in. But when I say grid computing to you as a total novice, it's like the substance shit.
Yeah.
Marketing won out.
Yeah.
Oracle's guys came in and they said, we're going to call it the cloud
Yeah.
because we want to de-technicalize
Yeah. Absolutely.
the technology that's behind it, which was wonderful to raise a few bob and was wonderful to say you'll have access to this everywhere you want, but it's killed the industry.
It's disconnected people's understanding of what it is, right? So the floppy disk, if you take that, you're carrying around your information with you on the disk. The minute it goes to cloud, you're not carrying that information, you're accessing that information. And with 2007 and the phone coming in, that gave you access to your information 24/7, no matter where you were, as long as you had
Absolutely.
your mobile device.
And it nearly becomes, whether you want to believe it or not, you nearly sort of believe that it is somewhere in the ether.
Yeah.
It's a bit like my own children at the moment. They don't know what money is.
Yeah.
Because they've never had a crispy 50 note in their hand. Yeah. So when they say, rev me 50, sure, Dad, come on. Whereas there's nothing like 50.
It's just a number, right? It's just
the tangibility.
Yeah.
So when we're in 2026, and I know we'll talk about it later, but that lack of tangibility, how can that fibre cable there be worth $1 trillion to Ireland? Yeah. How can that fibre cable that goes over to Germany be worth 250 million? Whereas 1998, you go down to the docks and you had 40-foot container after 40-foot container by hundreds with boxes, with discs, with manuals, with mice, and people went, I can see, yes, there you've got all them jobs and all this. So I think that one of the things that has gone against us slightly is that lack of tangibility.
Yeah. And again, that's a communication piece, right? Coming back to that, well, what is it that we want to tell people to make them understand where the value of this is?
Yeah.
And then that they can take it away with them, right?
I agree. That's why, as I say, I usually have a 5 1/4 inch floppy even. Not 3.5. That's way too technical.
Yeah.
But you get the gist, right?
Yeah, indeed. But so it has been an interesting, I guess, evolution over the last, what it is now, 25 years, if not 30 years, in terms of an Irish context in the data center industry. So data centers have been around for an awful long time in this country. Yeah. It's only been the last 10 probably that become. If I remember myself, I think when I kind of got into a conversation about it. I think it was Apple in Athenry was the first time that it became public news and knowledge and a discussion point.
I think you're right.
And at the same time, Denmark had Vibo, I think, where Apple are, and that discussion was going on. And Apple built in Denmark, didn't build in Ireland. And still that same question is happening today, right? The same challenge is happening today in the community interaction and the challenges they had there in the planning and so on.
Yeah, it does feel a bit like Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. 2015 was the big announcement of Apple were going to do a double proximity zone, one in Viborg, I thought, but you have a different...
Vibo, that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
I think, isn't that right, Lutz? Yes, excellent. I got
there
a thumbs
you go,
up.
because I was with somebody recently and they called Athenry at Henry.
Yeah.
So let's all just roll in with the flow. We both know what we mean.
Yeah.
So yes, you're right. Basically, that year, 2015, was interesting because it was like a vortex to the future. It was like a vortex to the future.
It was
because the scale that was being discussed. 500 acres. In a
massive,
in a 100 megawatt data center, private wires to renewable energy. So it touched on all of the points that are now still the topical points. But rather than embracing it and seeing it as that, it was sort of seen, not just in Ireland, by a lot of locations as good farming land or good agricultural land or good forestry land and good this and good that and good the other. Well, we'll get to that afterwards, but I think that it was sort of when it came into the consciousness. But again, what happens is that in the same way as thousands of people are saved by the RNLI every year in every boat leaving Bray to Dunleary, unfortunately all the time they save people never gets recognised, but there's one unhappy ending, and it's the headline news. And that's what really annoys people in RNLI,
Yeah.
because I know one. And he says, why don't they report it? We saved 10 people. It's our inclination as humans to lean into more negative
Yeah, the
stuff.
disaster piece, you know.
The
that's what we
disaster
like,
piece, as my mother, God bless her, she used to love Coronation Street and EastEnders. And I said, why do you love misery? And she says, because it is misery.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's part, because you watch that, they're the longest lasting programs on the TV.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just part of our
Yeah.
DNA, you know.
Things could be worse, you know, than our own
could
situations.
be-
So they watch stuff that's just.
Or to the point, and I think we live in a world now where people use that old phrase, look here, not there. It's a great way of deflecting away from other stuff.
Yeah. Maybe
Is-
more important, you know. Yeah.
You know, it's Alex Ferguson's favourite of all time when he was Man United supporter. He used to deflect away from the inefficiencies of his own team and say, they're crap and they're crap. But yeah, around then was the time that it started, because people started to see then the scale. And also, probably there's two sides to it also. The opportunity was one, but then it was the challenge.
Yeah.
And then you start to see headlines like one data center is the same as a large city. And of course,
Electrical consumption, water consumption.
they're very emotive.
Yeah.
That's really emotive. That's really emotive language that you're using. But of course, now we look back and 100 megawatts is like entry level.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's all relative.
Yeah.
It's all relative. But that was when it started to get the consciousness, and then it was started to be nobody's going to lose friends in certain sectors by dissing that asset class. And we'll talk about, have we moved forward, have we moved sideways, are other places coming in, but it's amazing how predictable human nature is too. Amazing. Going back to steam, electricity, change.
I see some advertisements there on social media and online about back when electricity was first coming to be popular, generating in the cities and stuff, and people saying it's going to kill you, you know, everybody's going to die with the voltage when you touch the lamppost and the light switch and so on.
It's a great
sensationalism, you know.
But that's it, right?
Yeah.
And I often tell the story, which I learned in the United States not too long ago, that when Henry Ford was trying to get cars to become the de facto form of transport, the biggest group of people who were trying to stop it were the people who grew oats. Because when 80% of your market is horses, then guess what? Cars even then didn't run on oats. So there's a great story about when they were trying to actually bring the legislation to put more funding into the roads, that the oat associations, you could go into it and rent what was called chain gangs from prisons. And they rented loads of chain gangs from the prisons to break the roads around Washington, D.C., so that all the legislators for their final 5 miles couldn't get in by car. They had to get a horse. And this was, so I think we all can learn so much from human nature that
it repeats itself.
It just repeats it.
Yeah.
But the oats is now something else. Or that this is something else, or the oil people are always going to give lip service to some other form, you know, and because you're protecting, ultimately people will protect what's putting, inverted commas, food on their table.
And to your point, talking about the oil companies, when oil was found, the greatest consumption of oil was actually lamps, and that did the whaling companies out, because lamps are run on whale oil and whale blubber, and it wasn't that the invention of the combustion engine that really drove on the oil business. Like, so everything develops, everything moves, everything changes. And as long as we understand that, first of all.
We talk off air about something I learned from the way too many investigative programs I watch on Netflix, and what I've learned from these investigators is I will follow the evidence wherever the actual. But then you get all these biases and you get contamination and you get different storylines being hijacked. That's not to take away from the challenges and opportunities of digitalization and all that goes with it. But I think that we also can step back slightly and say, okay, human nature is reasonably predictable. And somebody way more intelligent than I said, the one main thing we learn from history is that we don't learn from history.
Yeah. Yeah.
And human nature is pretty much, whether it's 1919, whether it's 2019, whether it's future will be a bit slightly different maybe, but that's why. So getting long-winded back, I think what Apple did in 2015 is it brought the opportunity and the risks to the fore. Because up to then it was just like an evolution. Was there big headlines when we went from a floppy disk to a CD? No. Was there big headlines when we went from CD to a data center? No. But then suddenly we had a very large one. It was outside of what we'll call the T50 ring, which is where our fiber is. And suddenly then, and it really has flip-flopped, lurched, gone sideways, gone backways, and that's not all the fault of the state and the government and the semi-states. It's the data center industry as well. But I think it's a bit like what we're trying to do at the moment collectively around the world is you're actually trying to lay down a high-speed train like you get in Japan on top of the old steam rails. Meanwhile, we have to have both running at the same time.
Absolutely.
And it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge.
Because one side is private sector, the other is public sector in reality, and now they combine with intricacies that we aren't prepared for.
That's a wonderful, wonderful observation, right? Reason being is that sort of up to Apple in Ireland, the data center sector or the data sector or whatever one wants to call it was able to work without over engagement. Over engagement. It was an application at a level. The capital spend was at a level. The corporation tax was coming in. We were building. We needed planning. But once then you step over, and I want over 5 years the same as what will be Kilkenny City. People get frightened. But, as entrepreneurs and as business people, we actually say, well, if I'm not frightened, then maybe I'm
not pushing hard enough, right?
Or I'm just not doing something that will keep me interested in a month. Whereas there's other types of people, as we said earlier, who basically have everything mapped out within a spreadsheet to the level that, it took 50 years to build Kilkenny. In fact, it took 200 years to build Kilkenny. So we have to find a way. And we're only starting now where the demand is seen as part of the solution as well as the problem. But that takes time.
What was your question, Larry? It's what does Cosmos sell?
We are actually digital quantity surveyors, cost consultancy based in Denmark now with operations in Ireland and the UK and basically globally because our clients are global.
So you're saying we offer clarity, we offer confidence, we offer clients confidence in their budget and we offer clients confidence in their cost and carbon ambitions.
It doesn't sound believable. You need to, I think you are thinking about it too much.
I am absolutely trying to think of the words. Because without the demand, would we actually be investing in upgrading? If it wasn't necessary, would we actually be doing it?
Yeah, it's a great.
The probability is no. Like, don't fix what's not broken.
It's a great question. It's a great question, and I'm a little bit older than yourself, but I certainly remember traveling in Ireland on roads that weren't fit even for cars.
Unsealed and what have you.
You'd get to Limerick in 2.5 hours, and then Kerry in 6, but. Ultimately,
still like that, by the way. That's
but ultimately, you have to say when you drive in Ireland now, the roads are fantastic. And all of again, we can use it as an example. It was the end of all towns that were being bypassed, these roads. There will never be, you'd never have any. And yet, when I pop into Gorey, I pop into Arklow, when I pop into Borris and Ossory, they're booming. Because people are coming off the shops. The thing. So these are all exactly the same 20 years ago that the bypass was going to wipe out. So we'll probably in 20 years look back and we'll talk about it a little bit later and say, what was all the fuss about?
That's generally what hindsight does for you, doesn't it?
Hindsight.
Really, come on.
But
everything's a struggle. It's you're changing mindsets. You're changing, and for a lot of people in reality, it's the perceived risks, the impact it's going to have on my life, my family's life, because of the unknowns. We just don't know.
No.
And that's kind of what we're talking about here when it comes to the communication piece. Is that, and it's the kind of the last point on our subject matter, but just to come back with this kind of golden opportunity for Irish data center developers and contractors, what we're noticing, and I think you've mentioned quite a lot on social media, is that like a lot of our tier ones, contractors, specialist contractors, designers are all working internationally now, delivering major capital investments like data centers, pharmaceuticals, what have you.
Yeah.
And then I was sitting back one evening reflecting on why are we struggling to deliver projects here in Ireland? We can't seem to get the white collar, the blue collar. We can't seem to build as fast as we want. And a light bulb kind of goes off and going, well, of course we can't, because there's no one here. We're all in Europe building, aren't we? Or Australia or the US. Isn't that the reality of it all?
Oh, I think that's certainly one way of looking at it, all right. But I think there should be a distinction, and I have lived here all my life, but I definitely think in 2026 that there's a big difference between Ireland and the Irish.
Mm.
And what does that mean for your listeners? I think that the Irish, no matter what country you are, and you've mentioned some of them there, we've been building canals, building subways in London.
Our greatest export has been our people.
Right? And they tend to either just roll their sleeves up and get going, or they just find a way of getting shit done. And Ireland obviously had that same ethos when we had nothing. Yeah. And we did what we needed to do to, everybody free secondary education in 1956, corporation tax, all this type of stuff. But I think what's happened now in 2026 is that we actually are classic third generation, which is the Chinese proverb of first generation make it, do everything, second generation keep it, because they saw with their mum and dad. Third generation look at it and say it'll always be there. Yeah. So what we have to do is, again, if we were to learn from history, is what did we do in this country in 1970s and 80s that made foreign direct investment come here? Well, we did things like advanced factories. We built in Finniskillen. Would Abbott Laboratories ever go to Sligo if they didn't just rock up, land in the airport, and there's your factory already built? All you have to do is recruit people. Now that is what you call, I think the Canadians have a go where the ball is going, not where it's come from. Hurling probably has the same, right? So that's just ticking the box, even in our own sector, going back to around 2000, when the reality was there that we weren't going to be shipping floppy disks and CD-ROMs. We ran a cable from North America with no contracts, a fibre cable. And the powers that be at the time would have swam the Atlantic themselves with it in their teeth. If they had to, because that was basically anticipating. Yeah,
that's what was needed.
Anticipating the next wave. Guess what? You can have the best port with the best 40-foot containers, but if it's going out of fibre cable, what do you need? Fibre cable. Yeah. So therefore, that sort of anticipating, which is always where the pain is, to your point, because that's where the votes are lost, when people start saying, this is what we need to do. And there's a famous saying, which I love greatly, is most people want reform, but less likely to want change. And guess what? That is the greatest challenge that you have. So to your point, and it goes back to Apple, actually, is that a lot of the contractors who were brought that close to this amazing campus 5 to 10 year project, when that tap was turned off in Galway, they said, well, we are not going to accept failure as our mark. We will go, Mr. Apple, and build it for you in Denmark.
Yeah. There's also a piece with it, I think, is the diversification necessary to prevent what happened in the financial crisis of 08, 09, 10 and 11.
Yeah.
Coming out of that, contractors going, well, we're still in pain here, so we need diversification. So if that happens again, and when it happens again, at least we will have diversified our risk across industry, sectors, jurisdictions, you name it.
I agree with you. And if you talk to investors, successful investors, they'll always say, I have a diversified portfolio.
Yeah.
I'm in this, I'm in that, I'm in different geographic areas. So certainly that helped greatly, that mindset shift. And then, of course, the earned reputation. Everybody talks about the Microsofts and the Amazons and all the rest, but actually what prepared the Irish contractor to be ready to avail was Intel, Digital Equipment Corporation, Sandoz, Pfizer, or in your own hometown, you're Galway man.
I'm a Limerick man, actually.
You're a Limerick
but,
man. So Dell,
Yeah.
Gateway,
Yeah,
that
that's right,
mindset, analog devices, you know, they were well before. They're 80s companies. So they got into the mindset early of how do US companies work? How do senior vice president of the left side of the building actually think? What's their, you know, there's a few things there. Britain opting out of Europe. How did that really help us? Because we're the last ones now that use common law. Everyone else uses civil law.
That's right,
America uses common law. They like the contracts. But it's to be ready to act on the opportunity, not to sit back and say, if, maybe, possibly, I'll wait. It's to act. It's to act. And I think one of the things that you can overdo is overanalyze, overthink. And that's maybe where instruments of a state, they're not built that way. They're not built that unless you've nothing. Unless you're Ireland of the 60s where you've nothing. You know,
well, the only way is up. Like, you
there's
know,
only
it's
one
one
way.
way.
So really, whereas you get to a stage now where what happens if, and then we find ourselves, to your point there, the golden opportunity. Is it a golden opportunity? To me, it's actually a opportunity that's been built on previous opportunities that have just been availed of. Because an awful lot of lads that are working on data centers, or they're maybe at this stage their dads were down in Israel building Intel's plant, or we're over in pharmaceutical places in Lithuania. So it's just they've seized on the opportunity. They've also earned the trust. And this is going to sound really interesting. I'm sure a lot of your listeners will say they get shit done.
We've heard it through the grapevine and within different countries. Is that, and I guess it's that the work mentality as well, to a certain degree, for good or for bad. You know, the contractors and specialist contractors work hard when compared to some of their competitors across Europe. The hours are long, and they do, as you say, get shit done.
They get shit done. The other two things that's really interesting feedback that I hear is that I guess we, again, don't fully appreciate or understand the hundreds of years of dynamics of European history between different clans and different locations not particularly wanting to embrace other locations coming in and doing project management on their big projects. They know very little about the paddy.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you're coming in and you're looking at, and just hypothetically picking France, you know, if you want to bring certain nationalities there to project manage, it's a tough one. They don't like you before they even rock up. You know, so if you are a paddy, you rock up and you're bringing, and you're the meat and the sandwich, they get shit done. And the other part which I particularly like is that because English is our native, natural, sorry Gaeilgeoir speakers, but most places speak, is that we've nowhere to hide when shit goes wrong.
Can't be hide behind the language.
It's a bit like when you go on holidays. Everybody loves you until your watch goes missing, and then nobody speaks English, right?
Sure.
So there's layers upon layers. The challenge now at the moment will be to maintain that. And I think what I'm seeing, which is wonderful too, and it's come back to me many times, is that unlike other nationalities as well, early on the paddies will always engage with local suppliers from the off. Site clearance works, all that type of stuff. Let's get local. Let's get people to work on that with us. Let's embrace them. Let's actually work with them. And it's the only way you can scale these projects anyway, because we're not producing the talent to be able to do that. We can't send all the heavy machinery and whatever else is needed.
To a certain degree, I guess we're used to it being an island, you know, everything is imported to a certain, not everything of course, but to a certain degree, things are imported and you're used to dealing with.
So one of the things that comes back, particularly from Asian companies that are coming in, which always they're just finding their way, is the Irish seem to be able to integrate. That was my worst accent. You get the gist. That's also a risk, though, I would say, over time. Because if you look at the Irish, a lot of American companies came over here in the 80s to do the main contract, to outsource it to now what are those tier one companies that are. So you've got a risk there as well. But I think if you own and manage the relationship and the purchase order, and that's what is the key thing. Delivery, performance, budget. You'll keep this in check. But if you could become complacent,
Yeah.
like everything, and you allow the subcontractor to have
Yeah, direct
the
connect.
leading role.
But I'd say that that's changing anyway with the scale of what's happening at the moment. You just can't do it now with the same contractors, same stakeholder groups, consultants. Not possible with the scale that we're building across the world when it comes, again, specifically to data centers. So what we've noticed across Nordics is kind of diversification on who's delivering projects and what they're delivering, etc. I think it's just a natural evolution at the
And
end
the
of the day.
scale and the funding of these, you have to also remember the funding required to actually take on a main contract just to have the cash flow.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
huge.
It's huge. Yeah. At the risk profile for contractors and general contractors is massive. Like,
And also, one of the great things I'm seeing, which is again we learned from history, is that when I came into this sector in the 80s, we used to hand make all personal computers, believe it or not. We used to get the discs and the floppy disks and the monitor, and we'd assemble it and we'd sell it. Then Dell came in, of course, to your neck of the woods, and they started pre-assembling already, take it out of the bonded warehouse only when somebody ordered it. But it was automated, it was factorized, it was industrialized. And what that meant was more people could get access cheaper, quicker than anywhere previously. And that is the next level, where in data centers, if we think of a data center as a computer with all the bits and bobs, that guess in the same analogy I'm giving there, in 87 we hand built in a workshop, then we factorized it, then we exported that we're going to see a massive acceleration over the next decade of what they call modularization.
You have to.
Where basically it's Lego.
Yeah, the industrialization.
The industrialization of it, that and that'll sort of, and whoever's the most malleable and flexible to be able to work with all contractors, all vendors, standardization. We have this I'm sure they have it in pharmaceuticals and finance as well. But I mean, I come at this I remember when DEC and IBM had who's going to be the biggest dick in the room, and we have our standards and you have your standards, and we never interoperate, and we're going to win and you're going to lose. And then some geek invented the internet, and then it was IP, and it all went away. Everybody overnight like that. But then none of that matters. You have to be able to connect to this. So what will happen sooner rather than later is there'll be a penny drop, and standards will be applied. And it's a bit like in a lot of things, everything seems to take an awful long time to happen, and then everything happens overnight.
Again, retrospectively looking back, you go, well, geez, that happened quickly. But when you're in the moment, it takes decades sometimes,
Totally. So we shouldn't lose sight also. And we talk about main contractors, and I realise that's what we're here to talk about a bit. But also the amount of actual factorised kit, the length and breadth of this country that's been exported from different companies now that are assembling. They call it rock and roll. I love it. Where they get the kit, they assemble it, and then they basically they roll it out. And that's actually for different types of skills, different types of services, great for the balance of trade. Again, it's because there's an awful lot of organizations have presence and substance in Ireland, but they don't have any data centers here, but they use it like as their fulfillment center. Why? Because it's where people are.
That's where the skills are, right? And the experience.
Do you know, I've been thinking about this a while, and I think that it's that we understand the question. Because everybody will give you an answer. Everywhere. Some places actually will give you an answer, and people and organizations, you ever meet them? They give you an answer before you even ask the question. You go, that's not what I actually asked. But I think at this stage that the Irish companies that are delivering these, they can nearly anticipate. And that's what you want, isn't it? That's what you want, because in big platform companies, and this is what we have to remember, the money that they're making is in the platform or the data.
It's not the asset.
Not in the centre.
No.
The centre is the what.
That's just a function of how do we get from A to B, or A to C, should I say.
Totally. So in organisations, when they look at this and they say, oh God, it's like we used to look at facilities and IT in our companies. Oh, jeez, they're cost centre.
Exactly.
So That's an
And
interesting.
the same principle applies for any manufacturing. Actually, like your pharmaceutical, your high-end manufacturing, the assets themselves are a product they need in order to deliver what it is that they're actually manufacturing and selling,
Yes.
which is the basis of their business.
Yes.
And generally, the people in the room within those organizations look at that as something they just procure. In the same way you procure your plastics, your chips, your whatever, you're just procuring your asset in order to facilitate you actually doing your job.
And I probably learned too late in my career. I wish I had learned earlier. Was that you forget that the person on the other side purchasing has also his own or her own reputation. So when you talk about cost and delivery and all the rest of it, it's really actually about their reputation.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, the longer I live, the more I realise that saying nobody ever got fired for buying from IBM
Yeah.
or Cisco
Yeah.
or one of these others. Because when you deviate away from someone who's delivered track record for you, if something goes wrong, you're to blame.
You're the fall
Not
guy, I think.
them.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a little bit of that, I'd hope, building into the Irish ecosystem DNA. To date, in 2026, I see no complacency setting in among the contractors. In fact, I think what's happening, and I love, it's a pinch me moment when I go away and I see more people from other countries pitching to the Irish than us pitching to them.
Yeah.
Is that what's keeping them actually really hungry is the next gang coming through that are looking at them and are now developing digital tools, digital twins, coming to them and saying, you know, I don't know anything about that, but I tell you how you can do it more efficiently. I can tell you where you can actually build it before you build it.
Yeah.
So what they've done is they've created, and we don't want to get too soppy about it, but people and ecosystems become what they see. And they hear people saying, that's a
Absolutely,
problem,
yeah.
that's a problem, that's
Yeah.
a problem, that's a problem. Oh, I'm a good coder.
You're a result of your environment at the end of the day. Like, so if you're in that environment looking at that and you have all these skills, then obviously you're going to challenge your environment with your skills. And
Totally.
Yeah.
One of the biggest companies you mentioned on your list started off with sprinkler systems for Intel. And now they're a $3 billion export company.
Yeah, massive.
So how would that
it's massive stuff.
ever have happened if that big North Star project was there? And I know there's always a discussion about indigenous trade and foreign direct investment. In the absence of indigenous industries, we've no gold, we've no oil, we're making such a dog's bollocks of the offshore wind that if we were to wait for all that, in the absence of any of that, we have to keep rowing this foreign direct investment boat.
Absolutely. Well, if we didn't, we'd be back in the 80s and back in the 70s in the reality, because we don't have that natural resource. Denmark are the same as a country, and they've doubled down on their people, looking at their people, looking at culture, education, experience, knowledge. That's where that's their main commodity.
Absolutely.
And the principle is the same for us. Farming, both countries, is kind of similar in terms of what we export and how we focus on farming, but nevertheless, it's the people.
Yeah.
So with that, and we've talked a little bit about it then, the Irish industry has the experience, but can it scale? And then a little bit on the inefficiencies of our own indigenous industry. When you talk about our public sector projects, the amount that we're going to invest in public sector infrastructure, not just digital infrastructure, but all infrastructure here in Ireland. We talked a little bit about the grid, but you have your rail, you have your metros, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
How do we balance that scale then if all our tier ones are busy diversifying across Europe and we need to then double down on what we're building here?
Well, one thing that in my experience in my life is, whether it's a personal relationship or business relationship, is you need to actually have certainty on time. Because time certainty is something that you only really understand that when you've been through a full investment cycle. And many of your listeners are in finance space, and you get a credit committee and they say, right, there's X amount of millions, spend it by X or it's gone, or it's going to cost you more. And I think that sometimes that's missed by people in the system, that, sure, if they don't do it in the next 10 years, they'll come back in 10 years' time. I have found, and we'll go back to the Apple time, that's a decade, that's a whole decade, that's a whole cycle where, again, looking at history, if you learn anything from what you said about electricity, water, etc., there are 4 basic phases that society goes through in rapid change towards anything, any change agent. First they ignore it and hope it goes away. Then they fight it and again hope it goes away. Then they take it as their idea. And then the fourth phase is, sure, wasn't it always self-evident?
Yeah.
Isn't that what we meant all the time?
Yeah.
So if you look at electricity or steam or any of these industry, and we have to say it, that data is the equivalent catalyst for a new innovation age, in the same way as steam was,
Absolutely.
as electricity. And when we think that way, then you say, oh, there's no jobs in the centres. Then I say, come on, I'll bring you up to Roundwood, to the reservoir, and I'll show you, because you know what water can give you. You know what water can do. You know the jobs that it can create in economy. You know that it saves babies. You know that it helps hot coffee. But you have a knowledge of water. So when you look at that, you'll say, oh, there's no jobs. But. So when I bring people to data centres and they say, oh, that's great after it's built, but there's nobody working here. Let me explain. That data that's in that centre is now running a full body scan in a hospital. That data that's in that centre is sending Revolut, whatever.
It's your banking, it's your entire backbone of your society.
It's your entire backbone.
It is
But
now, you know, yeah.
until the time that becomes everybody is self-aware, you'll always then have, but what about? But what about? In Ireland, we seem to have got ourselves into a situation where we absolutely know what the solutions are. We absolutely see it every day. Even the instruments of the state, AirGrid, ESB, Board Cash, they know what needs to be done. Everyone knows what to be done. But we don't seem to have that certainty on decision, on time. Yes, let's do it. Let's do it by that date. And I certainly, after a decade of watching different parts of that mosaic move around, I don't know, as I sit here with you, what can give us that bar. Such decisiveness among the government to say, these are executive orders.
Yeah.
We don't work well in that space.
No, and I don't think anybody would put their head in the block and take that responsibility, would they?
I don't think so. So therefore, where does that leave us? You nearly want, we do tend to be quite good when there's an event, you know. So I don't want to put the hex in it, but a couple of bad quarters of corporation tax.
Yeah.
2 or 3 quarters of bad corporation tax.
Look, all of that's inevitability. Everything is cyclical, you know.
And does that give it that,
Yeah.
what if that went on for 4 bad quarters?
Yeah.
What do we do then? Because there's just no doubt that we need, to your point, and I think you make a great point actually, sometimes, because everybody needs a boogeyman. Every change needs a boogeyman. Manchester United needed Man City as the noisy neighbours because their own team were, you know, everybody needs like God and devil and all this.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's nearly an easy get out of jail card in certain quarters, data centres. But could we be sitting here, or could you have a guest talking about offshore wind? I guess you could. Talked about it for 20 odd years.
Yeah, we're still talking about it.
Could you have a guest here talking about houses? I guess. Could you have one for water? I'm nearly saying that you could have that same discussion with any of those
major services
infrastructure, I guess.
Yeah.
And they'd all come back scratching their heads. We know what we have to do, but we just wish the people that have the pulleys and levers would do it. And then maybe it's passing on to your area there, where you're saying is, 2 years to next general election. Whereas my suggestion, having met people in other jurisdictions, I can't speak directly for Denmark, but for France, for instance, they actually have infrastructure as a totally different thing, which isn't tied at all to the terms of the current government. They take things in 15-year rolling. Yeah. 15-year rolling.
You have to disassociate it and disconnect it. Otherwise, it'll always be short-sighted, cycle, political, views. It will always be that.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
It seems that way. And as I say, I know from speaking to some people that France is slightly socialist in its...
Yeah.
It's
Similar to Denmark. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we're getting there.
And that's kind of why Denmark governments take on the previous strategies and develop them. So Copenhagen, for example, in the 70s developed something called the finger strategy, where this was going to be the development plans. The center was the palm and the fingers were the development plan, and all kind of networks of rail and housing and that was picked up and carried and is still being carried today.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the seven.
But that's that certainty.
Yeah.
That's the certainty that one
and
looks
it's a societal good. That's the thing about it. It's done for. It's not the political piece. It's no. This is strategy for society. This is how we as a society are going to evolve. This is what we need to do as a collective.
Yes.
And whoever's in doesn't matter. Left, right, centre, left doesn't matter. We agreed here together as a collective, as a country, we would do this together.
Yeah, and something of that ilk is needed. Decisions need to be made. Actions need to be. It doesn't seem to be a shortage of cash. Doesn't seem to be a shortage of will, but there certainly seems to be a shortage of action. Boots on the ground.
It's the action.
Get the boots out of the boardroom. And get more of them on the ground.
No, this is it.
So that's that one, I guess. Yeah.
So if we didn't talk about the grid challenges that we seem to be having, it's a global challenge actually, and we can use Ireland as an example. We can use Denmark, the Nordics as examples. We're now seeing more and more reports in newspaper articles available to people talking about the amount of energy being used by data centers, the fact that energy prices have gone up because the consumption is now being greater, etc. What do we need to do here as a country in order to be able to facilitate this?
Do you know, I often think that a lot of the challenges are global, because anywhere 3 to 4 years ago, we used to say, well, if you don't have a shortage of electricity or you're not able, then you're not actually a tier 1 location.
Yeah.
So suddenly now we find ourselves in 2026 where digital data, the oxygen of this industrial age, everyone needs it. Finally, people at least are realising that everyone needs it. Whether you're a detractor on YouTube giving out about the exact platform you're using, everybody now gets that. So it goes back to the fundamental electrical grids that has stood us so well for the previous industrial age will not and are not coping for this industrial age.
Yeah, indeed.
In the same way as rural Ireland, beautiful Ireland, Americans coming by their plane loads to go down and kiss the Blarney Stone. Roads were great and grand and fine in the 40s, 50s and 60s. Then we started to get a few cars ourselves. We started to expand our cities. We wanted to go between cities. We needed to upgrade the roads. It wasn't going to happen by wishful thinking. We needed to get concrete on the ground. So just because we have a challenge doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
No.
It just needs to be addressed. And the first thing that has to be addressed is, this isn't a us versus you versus it versus them. This is actually, and it pisses me off sometimes, where because you're in the digital space, you're automatically a them.
Yeah. But everybody's in digital space.
And again, the data industry has a lot to answer for as well, because they come out and they talk about, which really gets up my nose, the digital economy needs this. There is no digital economy.
It's the economy.
There is an economy which has digital services.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the same way as there's no agricultural or retail, there's an economy that have these things. So the words that are used by both sides are wrong, because if you tell me that the digital economy needs this, and I have a certain inclination, I can easily say, well, that's not, I don't know what that is. I'm not in that economy.
I'm not interested in that.
I'm not interested in that. That doesn't benefit me. Whereas we have an economy. And if we broke it down, And way back in the day, when we didn't have anything but land, we had a agricultural-based economy. And we had in Ireland, two exports. The day we joined, this is an interesting thing, the day we joined the EU in 1972,
was it?
yeah, 72, 73, we had two exports. You're too young to remember this, but we had two exports and we had two boats. We'd live cattle out of Dublin Port and we'd live people out of Dunleary.
Yeah.
And they were our two largest exports, bar none, right? That was our indigenous industry was thriving because we maximised, well, maybe not because it was all on the hoof. We didn't carve them up and sell them in cuts. But that is, to your point, that is, if we were to look at our indigenous industry with no gold, no market size, with 4.2 million people, we're an island, that probably would be, I'm not saying it'll happen, but that is what we would rescind back to.
Yeah.
I guess. I have no idea.
No, indeed.
Right?
Yeah.
So what did we do? We joined the EU. We gave corporation tax incentives for people. Look at the international financial services. I don't have to name the people who were decisive at that time, but basically, I think you need some of that IFSC thinking. You've got empty warehouses. You've got probably the most deprived socially location in the city, and it is just falling apart. Somebody said, if you build financial services buildings here and you create what it is now, the IFSC, you will get X amount of percentage of discount. But it was decisive. It was ring fenced. You could get planning certainty. You could get this certainty. And now we're all, isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
But a decision was made.
Yeah, indeed. But again, hindsight, looking back, it probably took time in order for that to happen. Looking back at with the views we have now, would see it as a very quick decision, but it could have been 15, 20 years in the making.
You're so right. It probably took the last Guinness or peat or coal boat to sail away.
Yeah.
Or not Guinness, but coal and whatever else was keeping the docks running. But to get back to Ireland, the good news is that we have two seas and an ocean surrounding us, which is full of electricity, full of energy, full. We are a little island. And if we can connect, if I want to be the biggest baker in the world, I need to supply my own corn. Yeah. The only way I can do it, because I have security of supply. Yeah. If we can get our heads around how we can capture that energy in the two seas and one ocean, which we've none coming at the moment. No. We closed down our last one in Arklow a year or so ago. That is the raw material for these things called centres. And those centres are then underwriting, which is very important for the listeners. That in a risk-averse world where God knows what's happening when we've got the current socio-geopolitical, the wind farms and all the guys who are putting the money on the ground, they need to be underwritten. Now, the state will either underwrite them or large industry will underwrite them. But it has to start. Or both. Or both. So it's not an either or. We don't have any at the moment. We're planning it. So effectively, the next step will be to actually execute on some of those offshore. Because it appears that Irish society has become reasonably litigious with regard to it's become a thing. It's nearly become a job in itself, where anything to do with roads, rail, infrastructure, housing, whatever, not our data centres, is, I have no time certainty.
Yeah.
It's
just problematic. Even the types of conversations you're having generally in the restaurants and the cafes and the bars, it's all becoming negative. Children's hospitals, stuff like that. It's become a bit of a joke. And you talk about major infrastructure, you go, sure, that'll never happen. And everything is negative associated with it. And this leads us nicely into this reputational piece. Yeah, we're talking about kind of digital infrastructure, but actually what we're really talking about is just infrastructure in general.
Just infrastructure,
and the industry in general. And then the communication, the branding associated with the industry.
Yeah.
I had an interesting conversation a while back talking about how do we attract people into the industry.
Yeah.
And I was kind of saying one of the associations, I was saying, well, how many branding and marketing pieces do we run across social media and in physical form in our national schools and secondary schools in Ireland? And they went, we don't do any of that. I said, therein lies your problem. Because if you want kids to come in and be interested in the industry, you have to attract their attention early to it and then build momentum as they're growing up towards them entering the educational piece or the trades or whatever. But you have to start early with the momentum and the branding. And the same applies, I believe, this is my own theory, to our industry. When we talk about big infrastructure, we need to, wherever this infrastructure is going, to start early with our branding and marketing piece around what is it that we want to do and achieve, and how is it going to create value for you as the individual, where it's going to impact the most. Metro systems, rail systems, CPOing land.
I think it's a blended. I go back to the very first discussion we had today, as you asked me, how did I get into this industry? You got to talk about the why, because that's the sizzle. And it's like data center. And no matter how sexy you and I want to talk about the center, ultimately it's a very efficient box that maximizes electricity coming in and turns it into photons that go out. It's a factory. It uses a raw material that's electricity, and it makes data and it chucks it out. And that'll appeal to a certain ilk of person and a certain ilk of type of person who's more inclined in the engineering, building, construction sector. I would challenge you by asking you, what other sector in the whole planet has the guy who fixes the lift or installs the concrete or puts the subfloor out doing the bidding? You don't.
No.
You never hear pharmaceutical companies going out and talking about their very best and greatest drug. And here we have our spokesman for facilities who's going to tell you all about it. Right?
Yeah.
That's what the digital infrastructure space is. He has all the real estate investment trusts who own the building out doing the bidding. They have the guy who's doing the energy system doing the bidding. He has the guy who's doing the modular servers doing the bidding. But where's the why? Where's the platform? Where's the people actually who are making the software, developing the software that's changing your hospital visit? Where's they're afraid. I call them Voldemort. They're all powerful and all everywhere. But until the why gets put out, early indications are that in the United States now, one of those said platforms, one of the biggest two, is starting to run ads. And they're now starting to talk about their brand against healthcare, their brand against retail, their brand against, and then what you find is, oh, AWS, I think they're building one of them down the road. But you could talk all day, every day about the energy efficiency, the water restrictions, the whole lot. It's the what. We don't respond well to the what. It's a problem. The why. And in every single opportunity that I speak anywhere, I look around and I call out two names and I say, hands up who works for these two names. Very rarely. You'll never hear them on the platforms. Until the platforms that are actually facilitating the apps that are finding their way into changing the world, or the why. I hope you agree that's the why. The what is always after. It's the substance. It's not the sizzle. You know, and maybe that's the market. I'm spending too much time with marketing people.
No, you've a point there, and I think most businesses have that struggle anyway with their client base to get the why. You know, how many companies are open about doing after project reviews, discussions, open conversations about this for media. Very few people want to take that responsibility. Most organizations, communications department won't even allow it to happen, just in case you say something that maybe you shouldn't have.
You are totally and utterly right. Because when you have those said platforms who are doing the why or having
the testimonial pieces and all that,
they are afraid of their shadow, that somebody's going to rock up and say, and another thing, you're not paying minimum wage in Arkansas, and I want to hold you accountable for that. So ultimately then, it's just a vacuum. And the vacuum is filled then by the what. Now, there's no amount of discussions that I can have with you as an influential detractor about PUEs or water efficiencies or efficient or more 15 times. That's going to make you change your mind.
No.
But if I turn to you and say, I heard that you're unfortunate, you have something.
An ailment of some sort or whatever.
And I guess you went to that thing and the doctor was able to tell you before you left that basically we'll take that basal cell off because we're unsure of the coloration of it. That's what this thing is doing to help you.
And suddenly it becomes real, doesn't it?
Suddenly it
real.
becomes time. And again, I don't certainly want to bore anybody here or you or your listeners, but that's where the floppy disk in your pocket comes in.
Yeah.
And the amount of
It's
people,
tangible, yeah.
well, I actually genuinely usually do have one in my pocket because people will actually go, I remember one of them.
Yeah.
I remember my first, oh God, I used to spend days with that gobshite in finance trying to validate. And now I change it, I do a graph, it was great, and I'd save it on one of those things. And suddenly it's a positive. Yeah. It's a positive. It's not about the floppy. It's not about it. It's about the why. Yeah. Why did you need it in the first place?
The fundamental change we need in the industry is about the why. Similar again, I would go even about the metro to Dublin. We talk about the metro to the airport. It's not the metro to the airport. It's to service every single community between here and Swords. And I think reflecting on Denmark and the public authority, they do quite a good job with their communication pieces on the why, because it's a people's first approach.
Okay.
And if we approach everything from that perspective, people's first, how will we impact the people? What do we need to tell the people? What do we need to do for the people? Then the people will see actually that they really do consider us. And maybe that's the fundamental shift that we're looking at here within our industry.
It could be, or it could be one of the sectors that just eventually goes through. My children are 23 and 16, and they have no more interest in worrying about data centers because they know because they've been born into it. They're not just digital natives, they're everything online natives. Does that mean I can't do that if we don't have more of them? That's it. That's the discussion. So if we don't have more of them, does that mean that I can't have more of that? Yeah. Well, just that's my oxygen.
Yeah.
So maybe you have to just go through these hard waters.
Yeah.
And a bit
like it's the natural evolution of it all, you know. Every greatest transition is difficult, you know.
But isn't that the interesting thing I said earlier? First they fight you, first they ignore you, then they take it, and then they say it's self-evident. Do we just have to get to the self-evident stage?
Maybe that's next.
We're 2035 when we've got more electricity coming off the seas than we know what to do with, and somebody says, oh, we hadn't to use all this electricity. Yeah. And somebody goes, oh yeah, that's why we're holding off waiting for data centers. Self-evident. Yeah. So it's like us trying to swim across a rapid, and halfway through you say, oh, I think I'll do with the breaststroke, and I go, fuck off, I'm just trying to get to the other side.
Yeah.
The key thing at the moment is just get to the other side. Be consistent though. Try and this is what I suggest to any of your listeners who are in the construction stage. Look internal to your own organizations and see what you're using software for. Look what you're using, like digital twins is a great example. And when you're explaining to people, then say, God, you know, if we didn't have digital twins or we didn't have whatever process that's software driven, we would not be able to deliver this, that. Internalize it, something that you're familiar with.
A simple one is an internal communication tool where you can talk remotely with your colleagues in other parts of the world. Let's just start with that one. And you go, well, without that, how would we survive as a business? Well, actually, you wouldn't. The business would be different. It'd be a different structure completely to what we have now.
You've hit the nail straight on the head. And it's interesting that old saying, eating bread soon forgotten. But the early days of COVID, first 3 months of COVID, everybody suddenly loved the concept of a data center because they could use it for video. They could use it for this. You could work from home. You didn't have to travel. You could use it on a digital, And suddenly now we've forgotten. Slightly, because the norm now is, sure, was there ever a time before we didn't do this?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so I think it's nuanced. The whole thing is nuanced. I do think history will repeat itself. I do think that data or the digital or the why is probably the thing we do really poorly. Yeah, we communicate great on why the detractors are wrong. And we hit them on the engineering,
but not on the value piece, though.
Not at all. There's nobody talking, nor is that. The people, if you look at it honestly, the people that are doing the bidding, that's not really their gig. No. You know, it's like telling the guy who built the hotel to actually sit in the concierge and actually tell the person how to get. They're different people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why do we expect a different result? It's a different way of your mind working. And I think that as time goes on and we have more of my kids say, so that is affected directly. All those things. And there's nothing in my younger girl's life that isn't in that thing. Yeah. So if I don't have that.
It's natural evolution then. It's going, regardless of whether you want it or not, this is where it's heading.
Yeah, and it's only just flashed across my mind, but my mother born 1930, died in 2015. That's some evolution of technology, space, world wars, all sorts of things. And I remember not too long before she died, I said, what was the greatest ever invention in your lifetime? Expecting, plane, rocket, whatever. The clothes washer.
Yeah, the washing machine.
Washing machine.
Yeah.
I said, why? Gary, 5 kids under the age of 7, terry nappies.
Yeah. Shit.
That's exactly it, right?
Yeah.
So this is, whereas if you were to say to somebody today that your grandmother said why was there a time when they weren't
here? Yeah.
And she said, no, that was the greatest invention of her life. And my mum was on it, like she had a flat screen TV, she'd got the whole thing. She said, no, none of that matters. She said, when that came into the house when you were born, her oldest was 7 or 6, I thought I died and got to heaven. So to your point, what does it mean? It wasn't the dishwasher, it wasn't the clothes washer, it wasn't the name of the clothes washer, it wasn't the efficiencies of the putting in the thing or the water. It was the fact that the problem it solved was clearly understood by both parties. Clearly understood, clearly communicated.
It's a nice way to wrap it all up, Gary. I think super interesting conversation, and we covered a hell of a lot around it. I don't think the problem's going to go away in the next few days, I'm sure, and these conversations will continue into the future, I'm sure. But thank you very much for attending.
You're more than welcome, and thank you for having me.
Cheers, man. Thanks very much for listening. There's a LinkedIn link below in the show notes. We would love to connect with you.
We hope you enjoyed it and have you with us in the next one. Thank you very much.